You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Ashley Hardgrave. All right, this week, we go inside the huddle with Mané Galoyan, the Armenian soprano and alumna of Houston Grand Opera Studio and prize winner at Operalia, is set to make her Santa Fe opera debut next month as Violetta in La Traviata. We'll find out how her Murican training prepared her to sing in the big Murican houses. Yeehaw! Then the stats are in from the Met's most experimental season yet. And speaking of experimental, it's a field report on Stockhausen's Licht from the Park Avenue Armory. Only good things, I'm sure. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, the opera world mourns the untimely death of Belgian soprano Jodie Devos. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign, send us a voice memo, or email us your hot takes, mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take. And without further ado, it's Oliver Camacho.
Well, without further ado, Ashley Hardgrave is back on the show, thank God. And just in time, because as we're recording this, always on a Monday, we just all I watched most of the Tonys. And I feel like we need a little Tony's recap because I think we intersect a little bit with
this
some
is
of the
sports talk segment.
Yeah.
And you know, the Tonys are a sport. So let's start with, I don't know. I mean, I can see Ashley and Matt both raring at the bit to talk about Tony
Yeah, do you want to get
so...
any takes in before we take them all?
Yeah.
I got nothing except for I hate the book The Outsiders, and I'm a little peeved that the musical won, but maybe the musical's great. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
My hot take, two quick ones. The Sufjan Stevens Illinois show, whatever they decided to put up, like I would have watched a whole show of that.
My
I would have
God.
watched that. I was like bawling. It was
I know,
so
I missed
gorgeous.
that when it was at Chicago Shakes, and I'm so mad.
Yeah. And then I was happy for Jonathan Groff because I stan. Okay, that's my take.
I'm also really happy for Jonathan Groff. He was quite good in that musical. A musical in which he doesn't actually have as much to do as a lot of the other people in it, but he does it very well.
you know, his speech was one of the most endearing, I think, of the evening. Although we should make a drinking game out of Jonathan Groff crying, because if you just play interviews of the last 6 months, he cries in every one, so we'd all be hammered by the time we were done with them on YouTube. Back to The Outsiders, yes, Weston, I'm a little surprised and perhaps disappointed that it won for Best Musical. I was also a little perplexed by the choice of the showcase piece, because, you know, in the Tonys, for Best Musical, they do, you know, a showcase piece from each of the nominees for Best Musical throughout the course of the awards ceremony. And they did, you know, part of the Greasers number, and then the really epic fight that happens between the Greasers and the Preps. I think they call them the Sochas.
The Sochas.
The Sochas, yeah. And the choreography is stunning, and it is brutal and really lovely to watch, but it's a weird way to end the button of the performance that you're doing to showcase Best Musical. I just thought it was very, very odd, very peculiar, but none of this matters because we got surprise visits from Jay-Z and from Hillary Clinton, so that was enough to win me back. Even after that super weird opening number, can someone check on Ariana? Is she okay? Like, what's happening? What is happening with this person? They keep letting her host award shows, and I don't know if it's the writers, I don't know if it's just her quirky personality.
She looked a little bit too deeply into Eddie Redmayne's eyes, I think, and that
I think they were trying to test the limits of her charisma. They were like, what if we make her say the most off the wall stuff?
Let's see. What was another like big, well, of course the Illinois showcase piece was enough to just like, you know, lay you down on the ground. There were some really excellent speeches. There was a lot of like, don't give up on your dreams, but in like a really earnest way that didn't sound like BS.
Like Keisha Lewis's.
Keisha Lewis.
Calling out her ENT, that she has been in the business for 40 years and won her first Tony Award. Like,
when I tell you I hollered when she called out her ENT and her thank yous, what I really appreciated last night was a series of shout outs from a number of winners about the top to bottom staff of production. Yeah. People were crediting front of house and ushers and technical folks, and for a telecast that's usually about performances, it was really beautiful to see people acknowledging just how many people and how much work go into making these magical pieces of art.
Well, unfortunately, this isn't MBS, it's OBS, so let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Mané Galoyan won the Zarzuela Prize in the 2021 Operalia, and I think she also won the Audience Award. But she placed second in the main category. That was in 2021, and that was the first time I heard her name. And you just do a little bit of digging on Mané, and you realize, oh, she's really been in this business since she was, a very young person, like maybe since she was like 18 or 19. I think she tells us in the interview exactly when. She joined the Houston Grand Opera Studio at a very young age, and then went on to become an ensemble member at Deutsche Oper Berlin. We're going to ease into this conversation with her performance from the 2021 Operalia, which is very problematic because of where it took place and who was conducting. But let's just celebrate Mané in the role that will be her Santa Fe opera debut next month. Mané Galoyan, welcome to Opera Box Score. I'm so excited to hear you sing next month. And we're going to get to your Santa Fe opera debut in just a moment. But for audiences who don't know your full path, can we start with Houston Grand Opera and how you eventually ended up at Deutsche Oper Berlin?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure.
It's our pleasure for sure. And I wish the audience could see how gorgeous you look on a rehearsal day in Santa Fe. You really are like the full package, but I'm as gay as a goose. So, please don't be, alarmed.
I like all the compliments. No worries. It doesn't matter.
So, Houston Grand Opera, you were in the studio in the teens, in the 2013, 2015?
2015.
Okay.
I mean, the path leading to Houston Grand Opera was also very special because it happened just out of blue. I was doing a competition in St. Petersburg, and Diane Zola was one of the judges, and she invited me to do the summer program, which is called YAVA, Young Artist Vocal Academy, of Houston Grand Opera. And it's just a week, and you do that. It's very intense. And so at first I did that in 2014. I love the company. I wanted to be part of it. I was like, I have to be back. And they told me I'm too young. I was 18, 19. I don't remember. I think I hadn't turned 19 yet. And I was like, I want to come back. I have to be here. And they were like, you're too young. You have to do masters. So I started my master's in Armenia. And then I got invited to do the concert of arias. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't too young anymore after 6 months. But so I did the concert of arias and auditioned for the studio. And I got into the studio. And it was a big dream come true because I never imagined I would have that type of training in the States. I always imagined I will do something in Europe and be part of a theater. And so I did a Houston Grand Opera studio for 3 years because I was too young to graduate. And they were nurturing me. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences, although I would say it's a very tough program, very tough. And if you survive the program, basically you're ready for the rest of your life.
Well, in a way, that's part of the question is that, your career really started flourishing while you were in Europe. But early in your training, you have this experience in Houston singing in an American house. So I feel like you already have an advantage over your peers in Europe, and that you understand the expectations of the American audience before you're even fully formed as a singer. And it's my feeling, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that European singers have more distinct style and American singers have more pronounced technical ability. And now here you are, a singer who has half your training in the US, and then you're like finishing in Berlin. So you're becoming a complete artist, you're not even 30 years old yet, you know?
I would say I had the best teachers all my life. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. Even in conservatory in Yerevan, I had one of the best teachers. Her name is Susanna Martirosyan, and she sang in Mariinsky Theater. She studied with Bergonzi in La Scala before that, and I learned a lot from her. And then I came to Houston Grand and I studied with Stephen King, who was the guru of voice teachers in the States. And yes, I did accumulate along the way all the skills and tools needed to survive and develop my technique further from my teachers. And yes, the difference between American and European singers is that I think the requirements are different. I think American singers have to have good technique because the houses are so big. And unless you have a good technique, good projection, you will not be heard. Simply, you won't be heard, even if you have a big voice. Big voice has nothing to do with resonance. I think in that regard, I am fortunate that I started here, and it was way more difficult, demanding, and then I went to Europe. But I have to say, Deutsche Oper is a big house, so the difference wasn't that big. But when you go to Zurich, for example, and you stand in the middle of the stage, the house is beautiful, but it seems to be in your face because it's smaller. But between Houston Grand and Deutsche Oper, there were a couple of years I was freelancing.
I would love to hear about this breakout year and the Operalia competition. And do you feel, because like it seems to me that that's the moment where everybody knew your name. Do you feel like from that period is when all of a sudden all the contracts started coming?
I already had contracts that were very interesting and exciting before Operalia. I would say that was one of the reasons I didn't want to do Operalia in case I crashed and burned. And my contracts got canceled. But I did have some very exciting contracts. But you're right. After I did Operalia, my career kind of bloomed in a different way. I think singing for that big panel of judges who are, each of them are in one of the most important houses in the world, it really helps, because when you are validated by those people, like by La Scala, by ROH, by Munich, by, I don't know, the Mané and whatever, then others will think, oh, okay, there must be something good. These people, people who cast, the highest of levels, give this person a prize.
How was your preparation for the zarzuela? Because I understand you did very well in that part of the competition too. Do you have somebody who you were coaching with? Because this is my question about Operalia. I understand it's part of their mission, but honestly, where is Zarzuela being performed, and who is getting contracts doing this?
So zarzuela, I always loved zarzuelas. Even before opera, I loved singing zarzuelas. I don't know, maybe in my previous life I was Spanish. I don't know. But I kind of feel it in my heart. I can't tell. But I had to prepare. I was singing Carceleras, which is so chatty, so many words, and it was very difficult. But of course, I had my husband at home. Roberto helped me. He coached me to death. We would sit to, I don't know, watch TV or play something, and he would be like, okay, read me again, read the words again. And he's from Mexico, so it was very helpful.
Well, we're going to get to speaking about your relationship later. It's not that important to me right now. I want to talk to you now because you are, at a very tender age, being asked to sing the lyric coloratura heroines, the major lyric coloratura heroines. You are making your Santa Fe Opera debut as Violetta, and you'll be in Chicago in just a few months, opening the season as Gilda. And I haven't heard you yet, so I might be, this might be premature, but I know that Santa Fe has good taste. I know that Lyric has good taste. Do you feel like you are ready to put your stamp on these very important roles? These roles that are diva roles. I mean, for your voice type, they're the diva roles,
Well, I sang Traviata since I was 24, and it's been 7 years now. And I started too young, perhaps. But I was doing it surrounded by professionals, by people who were helping me in a very... it was in Houston Grand Opera. I had a subscription shows, performances, but it was very sheltered and very safe environment for me to start. Mm-hmm. And Violetta is one of the roles that taught me how to sing better. Because at that point, I was having another voice change. I was singing a lot more lyric coloratura repertoire, but my voice was changing. It was every few years, my voice goes like half a step lower. So I was singing a little higher. I was singing Lucia, Amina, and stuff like that. And it was, for some reason, it wasn't working. My voice was changing. So Brian Speck was like, Mané, we want you to do Traviata. And I said, no, I will ruin my voice. I cannot do this. It's, it was a dream role. Violetta is such a complex character. It was a dream role, and the music and everything. So I said, no. And then he was like, learn, sing a little bit. Nobody is asking you to step on stage right now. Just sing, learn and sing for us a little bit. Then I started learning, and I was having lessons with Stephen, and it felt like it was fitting me like a glove. And it did. Verdi has that it makes you sing better. And whether I'm or not I'm ready right now to make my stamp, I don't know. I think I have already made my stamp with this.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited to hear it. I do want to just dovetail on your idea about it making you sing better. I interviewed Freddie De Tomaso last summer. And, he is also very young and is getting all of these contracts for Lirico Spinto repertoire, not even 30 years old. And I say, well, how do you get away with doing all this repertoire? And he says, the hardest thing for me to sing right now is actually Verdi, because Verdi is so technically demanding. You have to be focused all the time on the technical production because of how it's exposed, how it's written. He says in this other more dramatic repertoire, more veristic repertoire, you can hide, but in Verdi, especially an opera like Traviata, which is still very bel canto, your tone is what everybody's hearing. There are moments where you're almost singing a cappella. There are plenty of moments where you're singing a cappella, so the tone has to be beautiful.
Yeah, I was just doing Suor Angelica in Bayerische, and although it's a very demanding role, it's short, first of all, and then For some things, it's much easier than singing Sempre Libera, for example.
Mhm. What's harder than that?
Oh, no. Luisa Miller.
Yeah. You mentioned your husband. For those who don't know, you're married to Roberto Kalb. What are some of the benefits of having such a renowned opera conductor as a partner? Or maybe the drawbacks, if you have those as well, you know?
It's incredible to be married to an amazing musician like Roberto.
He's also very handsome too, I have to say. Like before you guys were married, I've had my eyes on him for years.
Sorry, not sorry. Well, he's I think marrying him was the best decision of my life.
Mm.
Not for professional or musical reasons, but purely on a personal level. I think it was one of the best decisions of my life, and we are most of the time we're very much in sync about music and musical choices. And he's such an incredible musician. I can ask him anything, and he would know the answer right away. Like, comes out of whichever door in his brain, I don't know. And of course, it's a big advantage for me. I'm a pianist myself, and I had very good musical training, but he has way more knowledge than I do. Let's be real. But we love making music together, and that's one of the things that is so special.
I feel like you're in having a wonderful summer because you get to work together at Santa Fe. And I just love the way Santa Fe treats the principal artists. I love that they give you, houses and cars and stuff like that, so you can be comfortable while you're there. You're not actually in the same show, but yeah, Santa Fe really did. I don't know if you guys come as a package deal. Now it's like, hey, well, you're hiring me, you gotta do something for.
I don't think
Roberto.
we got a package deal, but it was very nice that this happened this way.
Right. You're in rehearsals right now for Traviata, which opens in just a few weeks, with Corrado Rovaris conducting. Just from talking to you, I feel like you probably speak a lot of languages. You dipped into German for a second there. And I don't know if you, with time in St. Petersburg, if you had to learn Russian. What is your lingua franca with Beksod Bronov?
Well, Russian is my second language, actually. I grew up speaking Russian. And with Bersot, I speak Russian.
That must make him very comfortable, right? To partner with you. Yeah.
Also, his second language. It's not his first language either. His first language is Uzbek. We communicate in Russian, but sometimes I make him speak English because he has to speak more English. But yes, it is more familiar. It makes him feel very comfortable.
And can you tell us about Luisa's production, or anything you want to share about this collaboration with Beksod or Carlos or Corrado, and what the rehearsal has been like for you?
One thing that is very special about this production is that Luisa and I know each other, I don't know, for more than 10 years. I met her at that Young Artist program, summer program that I was doing in Houston Grand Opera before the studio. And she's one of the first directors, professional, like solid, amazing directors I worked with. And that's why it's so special for me to do this with her. And the Peter Pastor, one of the music staff people, was there in Houston Grand Opera when I was debuting the role. And so I have all these people in Santa Fe that were supporting me since very young, and it's so special. And Corrado is such a wonderful person and such a wholesome musician, and so helpful. He always has advice that maybe you didn't have from other people.
Do you feel like Corrado has this tie to like the Italian tradition, and you're really getting like an Italian Traviata?
I think he would be the same in all different across the repertoire, across the different repertoire. But of course, this opera is dear to him because it is Verdi, and of course it is Traviata, and it's more special. But I think he would be the same repertoire.
You already said that you've been singing this role now for 7 years. Is there a part, maybe in Act 2 or maybe in the Act 3, that you really just like, this for me is the critical definition of Violetta? I mean, I love when she says, you're in my house, man. Like, watch what you're saying, like that. I love the sass of that. But there are so many small moments throughout the whole show where it's like we really see Violetta as a person and her humanity. Is there some part of the opera that maybe you want to just give us a peek behind the curtain that you really connect to, and you hope that the audience hears your little, I love this part, this like the special sauce on this one phrase because it's so meaningful to me?
The whole Act 2 duet with the Germain is just every time I sing Dite alla giovine, I have this emotional reaction to the music and the text, and it never goes away. And I have to say, every time the overture starts, I have the same feeling of, wow, how much I love this music. Every time the overture starts, I have the same heartbeat and the butterflies, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a dream. And Act 3, of course, Act 3, Addio del passato, especially the second verse that is most of the time cut. We are not cutting it.
Yay!
It's so special, and truly you can see throughout Act 2 and 3 how wise she's very kind and very wise. And it's so selfless. She's selfless. She's my best friend.
In the middle of that interview, you heard a recent performance of Mané singing Lauretta's O mio babbino caro from Gianni Schicchi from Deutsche Oper Berlin, and Addio del passato from Dutch National Opera, I believe in 2021. My thanks to the outstanding media team at Santa Fe Opera for giving us access to Mané literally as she was coming out of rehearsal. She's very busy right now getting ready for the Prima, and we were so happy to spend a little bit of time with her.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is Listener Mailbag.
Hello, Operaboxscore. It's PJ. I'd like to introduce a new segment to the show. It's called Blame Weston, or It's Weston's Fault, or What Am I Doing? Well, Weston said I should. I am sitting right now at intermission at the Park Avenue Armory on the Upper East Side of New York City. I raced up here after a stressful day to attend Licht. It's the music of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, widely acknowledged as one of the most important and controversial composers of the 20th century. I didn't know what I was getting involved in at all. I walked in thinking I might be the only person seeing this thing, and then I looked over and there were 300 people in beanbag chairs and seats and all comfortable in this theater in the round kind of environment in this giant armory, beautifully appointed. and the show was already going, and it was full of sounds, and the sounds of dripping water, and then a woman laughing or speaking in some foreign language that was indecipherable, and lots of humming and bees buzzing. Just an incredible sonic experience. The closest I've ever had to this kind of sound was seeing Maestro at Geffen Hall, where they had the Atmos sound system. That was pretty awesome. But this has really been exciting. It's intermission. We've got more coming. I blame Weston, and I thank Weston. I would simply not be here had I not heard Weston at the end of an Opera Box Score show say, by the way, if you can catch this thing, it's still running in New York, da-da-da-da-da. Thanks, Weston. It's really an experience.
Thank you once again to PJ, and I guess sorry, or you're welcome for the recommendation. Man, you know, I love Chicago. I think it's a great city, probably the best city in the world. But sometimes I look over there at the Big Apple, the New York, doing all the Stockhausen pieces, and I feel a little jealous. And one day, you know, I'm going to go out there on the bus and hit it big in a Stockhausen musicale.
There's one thing they say about New York, it's that it's a Stockhausen town.
It's a Stockhausen town.
In New York! Speaking of keys.
Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes, mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or you can just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com.
Subject to interpretation and analysis, let's crunch the numbers.
Well, folks, it's been a little while, but, you know, I recently turned 31, and, you know, what they don't tell you about turning 31 is that you kind of go through a second infancy, and, you know, you start teething again. And that means I'm ready to crunch some numbers. Is that joke anything?
What a
so
we got there eventually.
Okay, so crunching the numbers. So the numbers are in. There have been a couple of articles, one from the Associated Press and one from the New York Times by Zachary Wolf, kind of breaking down the Metropolitan Opera's last season, which has been, which of course was the big experimental season that we have talked about at length here on this show. More new works, more new productions, composers of color, women composers, you know, not too many of all those things, but like for the Met, a lot.
Also fewer operas than usual. That was part of their gamble.
So there's a lot of numbers that have been flying around, and the time has come for people like us and Zachary Wolf and the Associated Press to sit down and try to break down what worked, what didn't, and what that might mean for the future of not only opera at the Metropolitan Opera, but in general in the United States. And there's a lot of kind of interesting results here. I don't really want to monopolize the conversation here, but I do want to kick it off with some general good news.
Yeah, well, can I give some good news?
Yeah, absolutely. Oliver will.
So you're going to be reading from the AP story.
Yes, exactly.
Give some good news.
So, Turandot, the Zeffirelli production, the one that's covered in gold, was the top getter of the season.
Well, see, Oliver, I don't think that's good news.
No, I'm just saying. Well, actually, the Julie Taymor Magic Flute was actually the top getter with 87% attendance, or 87% of available tickets sold. Of the standard operas that aren't designed for family and holiday season, Turandot sold 82% or had 82% tickets sold. I don't know if that's exactly the same thing. The new Carmen we interviewed to start our season, Brianna Hunter, is that her name?
Yes.
She was in that cast. The new Carrie Cracknell staging, which opened with Igor Akhmetshina in the title role with Piotr Bechawa. That one had 81%. And then, this is good news, in third place was the Met premiere of Anthony Davis's X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, 78%. Yeah, revivals of Butterfly at 75%, La Boheme at 74%, and Weird, Nabucco, 72%. It's not one of my favorite operas, but
people love Nabucco for some reason. I've never really gotten it, but
It's Va Pensiero. That's why people like it.
That is the reason why. It's not Abigaile, which is the reason I like it. But
So bringing up the middle was the new Forza da Destino, which was a vehicle for Lisa Davidson. I would think that'd be higher, but it was only 71%. Just below that, the Florencia and El Amazonas, starring Eileen Perez at 68%. The highly publicized premiere of Dead Man Walking at the Met is only 62%. That has Joyce DiDonato in it.
Yeah.
And then El Nino, which was very experimental for the Met, coming in at 58%. Revival of Fire Shut Up in My Bones did better at 65%. And the revival of The Hours did less better at 61%. And the lowest attended, which really hurts me, Un Ballo in Maschera, which starred Angela Meade and Charlie Casanova, friend of the show.
I was also like, how can I see all those 44% of the shows?
Yeah, and how did Nabucco beat Ballo? Crazy. Okay, I pass it over to my colleagues.
Well, I will also say I think the biggest sort of good news of everything is that 72% of available tickets were sold this season, which is a big jump up from 66% the previous season. And the season before that was only 61%. So box office is looking not too bad overall. The 2018-2019 season, for comparison, was 75% of tickets sold. So we're only 3% away from what we would have considered normal a few seasons ago. So I think that's, that's really good news for the Met. And in general, we're starting to finally see the post-pandemic recovery.
And some other good news that I think is like evidence in favor of their big gamble that they made is there was a big jump in the number of new ticket buyers from from just over 75,000 or from almost 76,000 last year to almost 85,000 this year. And a quarter of those new ticket buyers attended a contemporary opera, which is substantial. And then about 10% of that 85,000 people came to another opera this season. So that conversion rate could be better, but it's pretty it's impressive to be bringing in more and more new audiences.
Yes, that's something that is desperately needed, has been desperately needed for decades now. I think I want to talk about a little bit about sort of the crux of these two articles, because obviously the AP article kind of just presents numbers very neutrally. The other article by Zachary Wolf gets a little bit more editorial
and salty.
And salty. Yeah. Zachary Wolf, I think, was in a bad mood when he wrote this article. Obviously, this will be on our website. You can check it out.
Who hurt you, man?
We were all
Who hurt
talking
you?
through this before the show today, and we were like, so how did you manage to take a mixed bag to positive set of results and make them seem like someone punched him at a funeral?
It's really, really funny. He has like a quote. Well, he one of the things he criticizes that I think is actually very valid, is the fact that, some of the big, new operas that were huge sellers, especially Fire Shut Up in My Bones and, The Hours, were brought back to the Met very, very quickly and did not do super well. They did not do the same numbers as they did the first time around, which I would argue is kind of to be expected. But he says, I can't blame audiences for not wanting to revisit that pair.
Jesus.
Fire is bland. The Hours is pretty, but exhaustingly tear-jerking. I wouldn't have paid to go back to either, which I think is extremely funny.
There's something to be said about how quick the turnaround was with those revivals, but the norm has been that pieces get a new premiere, big splashy premiere, and then never, ever, ever get done again.
Exactly.
So
that right there.
It really, it's a good thing that people are doing these new works over and over again so that they actually have a chance to make it into the repertoire.
Yeah. I do think that there is definitely this might have been too fast kind of situation.
I think that's a fair criticism.
And I think, not to overly psychoanalyze Peter Gelb, but Peter Gelb thinks like a Broadway guy,
Well, he came from Sony Classical Records. He's a producer man.
When he sees a hit, he wants to bring it back and do it again. And he kind of expects audiences, I think, to react the same way. Like, wow, I love this show. I'm going to go back every time I visit New York, because it's my favorite Broadway show. And the opera doesn't really work like that. Now, that being said, I do think it was a worthy experiment, an expensive experiment, to try to bring back some of these so quickly, to see if there are new audiences who are interested in doing that. Like how much of this is the novelty of a new work, how much of it is the quality of the work, and how much of it is new audiences saying, I already saw it once, or, oh, I want to go see it again, is a reasonable question, I think, to ask, because this is genuinely, the Met has never been like a super experimental house, but in terms of the scale of their operation, we have not seen a risk taken like this in the U.S. in a long time.
Yeah, and we applauded them for it.
Yeah.
We applauded them for it.
Plus, to complicate things, we are talking about shows where I'm pretty sure there are video recordings available to subscribers of Met Player on Demand available.
Yeah.
So that does make the resale value of it a little bit harder when you have that cannibalization, which is like we're returning to a conversation that's been had for over a decade at this point about the Met Live in HD. But you do have to wonder if it has something to do with the fact that I don't think it's the main reason why these revivals didn't sell out, but it might be some of the reason why audiences weren't as excited, because the ones who really, really were excited did still have a facsimile of the original available to them.
Yeah.
Maybe, but at the same time, if they weren't offering some sort of aftermarket purchasable video recording so that people who couldn't see it could watch it, we would be complaining about that. It couldn't win any Grammys, and we'd be complaining about it. And I mean, in thinking about all of this stuff together, I know we have a couple of other things we want to touch on, but data is data. I think any industry at this point has to make data-driven decisions. We have this information now. It doesn't mean you scrap and abandon this entire adventurous strategy. What it means is you take this in, you reflect, you adjust, and you pivot. So I don't think this means that they're going to fully do away with saying modern opera is not selling and then not do modern opera. That's way too knee-jerk of a reaction. I don't think Gelb's dumb enough to do that. So what I think it means is that we will see in the upcoming seasons, we will see possibly a reduction in the percentage of the season that's modern opera, but I don't think it's going to go away.
Some other points that get brought up in this article, big names still do seem to be drawing in audiences to varying degrees.
Oh, totally.
Updating the action tends to be a mixed bag, which, I think is not surprising to me. I think I think the way the Met updates productions is a little bit
shallow.
Weak sauce, yes, is the word I was going to use. Shallow works too. Because the difference between a Regie Theater production and an American sort of updating of the setting is the American sort of update always seems to be very much we're looking for a different aesthetic.
Right. We're not just, it's a question of are we putting a new coat of paint on here, or are we gutting it and totally reconceptualizing what it's trying to say, or drawing attention to a different point, a different part of the themes of the work. I think another trend that he calls out here that is interesting is that quality and sales are not necessarily going hand in hand. That's still true. Two of the operas that he says were among the strongest offerings of the season, El Nino and the Ballo and Mascara revival, were the two that were down in the 50s.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about obviously I'm a big John Adams fan, so I have a certain bias towards El Nino, but I genuinely think it was the single most interesting, not just musically opera of the season, but also visually the most interesting. But they made some odd decisions, because I think of all the operas this season, that's the one they should have done for a live in HD for, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just my algorithm, but of everything else in the Met season, I organically saw clips from El Nino more than anything else on TikTok, on Instagram, because the set design was so amazing. The music has lots of really big, exciting moments, a lot of really Instagram friendly singers in that production as well who know how to market themselves. But it just, because it wasn't a live in HD performance, and I don't know what the advertising was like in New York City. Maybe one of our listeners could let us know. But my impression was that the traditional advertising of that opera oratorio was a little lackluster compared to the social media online presence. And I've always wondered, with a lot of these larger houses, especially the Met, who have the actual budget to do really impressive advertising campaigns for these things. And just to be, every time I see something from the Met outside of the Instagram page, occasionally having a couple of behind the scenes gems, I'm so aggressively underwhelmed by the quality of the video they put out there and and they fail to sometimes see what's actually exciting about the show. So I kind of wonder if that's also something that should be considered, maybe even more than the selection of the operas, more than the singers themselves. If you want people to want to come, you want to show them something in a place where they'll see it, where they'll be like, ooh, that looks cool, And I don't know if they did that.
Well, if they would freeze the salaries of the two top dogs for one season, they'd be able to implement an entirely new marketing strategy for social media.
Sorry, Pete.
It's just something that I noticed. I have 2 points to make here. Both Yannick and Peter Gelb got 6-figure increases in their salaries. So Yannick's salary went up to 1.3 million, up from 1.195 million in the prior fiscal year, and Gelb got 1.3 million, up from 1 million. So these guys are getting, these $100,000 and $300,000 raises. And while I am certain they deserve them, if one of the things that we're doing is counting our pennies, mayhaps we freeze those salaries for a year.
I think we found a couple million pennies.
I think we found some. And Yannick's got 17 jobs. This is not the one thing that is sustaining him. He's great, no offense, but come on. But yeah, I think
in his case in particular, I wonder if it is related to the ramp up of him as the music director designate, because I know that took several years. I can't remember it, but I feel like we're probably through that at this point, with an increase in responsibility from the season planning, yada yada yada. But
totally.
No one, I don't know that's the best use. I feel like I can come up with better marginal expenditures.
For sure. And I'm sure that they're honoring his contract. And, I'm not saying that anybody deserves to be paid less. I'm just pointing out that if you're looking for a place, maybe they get, I don't know, a $75,000 raise from season to season as opposed to a 6-figure raise. And then also, but going back to Weston's point, I fully agree with you on that. I think, we're just, these younger audiences that they're after, we live on our devices, we live on our phones. And to have good quality but short burst audio and video of some of the experiences, and also to show people in the audience that they're coming from all walks of life. There are those super fancy elitist people that these, newbies or people who've never been before might assume are there. But also these audiences are younger. These first time single ticket buyers, were in their 40s, which in the opera world, yes, is young. And for me and my skincare, we say thank you. So I just feel like there's got to be a little bit more. I hate to use the word social media strategy because I work in higher education and that's all anybody barks about. But I think here it's something that they could invest a little bit of cash in. Literally, some of the cash they use for those 2 raises would cover a social media manager and would cover most of the licensing that you would need to get some more of these clips together, especially for the more obscure pieces. So yes, I take your point, and I have an idea on where they could get that funding.
Yeah, the better something. I love the behind the scenes. I love the look of certain things. I think the most viral clip of anything I saw at the Metropolitan Opera last year was a bootleg someone got on their phone of apparently the least well selling show. And I think that speaks to a poor prioritization of resources.
There it is.
Goodness, I can't speak. But all that to say, not to sound too much like Zachary Wolf and be too down on the Met, I think there were some successes, and I'm very interested to see what lessons they'll take going forward, and where they will inevitably faceplant sometimes. Let's go to the 2-minute drill.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
In absolutely shocking news, orchestral repertoire is dominated by men. A UK study analyzed 111 orchestras across 30 countries for last season. Their report states that 7.5% of the works were composed by women. Of these, 5.8% were by white women. Men, however, composed 92.5% of the scheduled works. 89.3% of those were white men. The report found that the top 10 composers, Mozart, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Dvorak, Ravel, Strauss, Rachmaninoff, Mahler, and Sibelius, accounted for 30.6% of all works. These composers' works were played more than 4 times the combined total of all works written by women.
New Zealand Opera is launching a historic Braille surtitle system for blind and low vision patrons. It's a recognition of Braille as the primary literacy method for a group of people. But secondly, it means we are getting the surtitles the whole audience are seeing, said Paul Brown, a blind opera fan and co-director of the company Audio Described Aotearoa.
Dubai's Azizi Venice project has announced plans to build a floating opera house within the luxury housing development. The 2,000-seat theater will host opera performances as well as ballet, concerts, musical theater, and comedy. So far, no plans to present Licht. It is estimated that the project will cost approximately $8.17 billion and is scheduled to be completed between 2025 and 2028.
Speaking of very expensive things, Rolex continues its full-court press of operatic partnerships with London's Royal Opera House. The brand's other partner institutions include La Scala, the Met, and Paris National Opera. Nothing yet for the OBS, but our wrists are waiting.
In major awards news, soprano Liliana Mindell won first place at Dallas Opera's Schmidt Vocal Arts Competition. Tenor Long Long is the recipient of TDO's Maria Callas Debut Artist Award for his appearance in Romeo and Juliet this season. Longtime Dallas Opera chorus member Dan Crowell was also recognized with the Director's Award. Romeo Castellucci's production of Das Rheingold at La Monnaie de Mont was awarded with the Prix de la Critique for Best Scenography by the French Comité du Syndicat de la Critique. Nothing but the best for these fine artists.
Conversely, nothing but the worst for Ildar Abdrazakov as he receives the Russian state prize from war criminal Vladimir Putin. Abdrazakov was canceled from his contracts at Vienna, Paris, and Zurich after endorsing Putin's re-election bid.
In trade news, Canadian Opera Company has announced that its general director Perrin Leach is stepping down after serving for 3 years. David Ferguson, a past president and chair of the company's board of directors, has been named interim general director during the search for Leach's replacement.
Exit stage right. Swiss tenor Eric Tappy has died at age 93. He was known as a Mozart tenor and in concert especially as the evangelist in Bach's Passions. Tappy was a member of the Grand Theatre of Geneva from 1962 to 1974 and was regarded as legendary for portraying Orfeo, Tamino, and Pelléas. After his retirement, he worked in stage direction and teaching, founding the Vocal and Dramatic Interpretation Workshop for Opera Lyon. He also taught at the Geneva Conservatory from 1984 until 1999.
Belgian soprano Jodie Devos has died from breast cancer. She was a finalist in the 2013 Queen Elizabeth competition and went on to join the ensemble of Paris's Opera Comique. A regularly featured artist with Palazzetto Bruzzane and the Center for Baroque Music Versailles, she released 3 acclaimed solo albums on the Alpha label. Jodie Devos was 35 years old.
Tenor Paul Sperry has died. Known for his interpretation of art songs, as well as modern and Baroque music, Sperry compiled and edited several volumes of American songs and was the first non-composer to be elected president of the American Music Center. He was also a devoted teacher at Manhattan School of Music, Brooklyn College Conservatory of Music, and Songfest.
And on this day, June 17th, first performances include André Compra's Les Fêtes Vénitiennes in Paris in 1710, Gaetano Donizetti's La Lettera Anonima in Naples in 1822, Victor Herbert's Babes in Toyland in Chicago in 1903, Frank Martin's Der Sturm, or The Tempest, in Vienna in 1956, Samuel Barber's A Hand of Bridge at Spoleto Festival in Italy in 1959, and Leonard Bernstein's A Quiet Place at Houston Grand Opera in 1983. Birthdays include, in 1806, German timpanist Ernst Fundt, the inventor of the modern timpani or the pedal kettle drum. In 1818, Charles Gounod was born.
Oh, Chucky G.
In 1858, it was the birth of Russian mezzo-soprano Maria Slavina, who created the role of the Countess in Tchaikovsky's Pique Dame. In 1882 was the birth of American/Russian composer Igor Stravinsky in St. Petersburg. In 1910, American composer Herbert Owen Reed was born. 2 years later, American composer Don Gillis was born in 1912. Happy birthday to mezzo-soprano Mignon Dunn, born in 1928. And on this day, June 17th, we celebrate the birthday of American countertenor Derek Lee Reagan. Happy birthday.
And that is your 2-minute drill.
That was just a little clip that you should find the entire version of from Jodie Devos in a 2020 concert that was produced by the Queen Elizabeth competition with, what is his name? Michael Schoenwandt as the conductor and Belgian National Orchestra. That was the fiendishly difficult concert aria, Vorrei spiegarvi o Dio, that she absolutely sang the crap out of.
Yesterday was when we all heard about Jodie Devos, and I have, a lot of friends in the Baroque singing world and a lot of friends in the French Baroque singing world. And yeah, my social media was just flooded with tributes and just a lot of sadness. She was just 35 and she was really at the start of her career. It was only 10 years ago that she placed in the Queen Elizabeth competition. She was getting all these engagements. She recorded three solo albums in addition to all the operas that she recorded with Bruzzane and CMBV. She won the Diapason d'Or for her Offenbach aria album in 2019. Her diagnosis of this rare cancer was just this past winter. So it all happened very fast, and our thoughts are with her family and friends.
Well, I think we could use some good news after that. So I want to talk a little bit about these Braille super titles. They're so cool, and I love this.
It's so rad.
It really is. This is the first of its kind, at least that we know of. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but my impression is that the subtitles are sent electronically to a personal device of some kind that reproduces the Braille in real time, so that you can experience the opera as you go, which is super duper exciting because if you know anything about Braille and the production of Braille, libretti or books in general, first and foremost, Braille books are huge. They're much bigger by necessity than a standard English book because you have to be able to feel them. They're much larger. They're incredibly expensive to print. So it's kind of impossible to get it out. You could theoretically bring your own libretto from home in Braille and read along if you happen to have one. But then you're also going with like a slightly different translation. You are, if there's any cuts, you're not going to know they're coming. It's a real mess. So having a system like this is genuinely so exciting because the alternative is like audio descriptors, which, when you're talking
had and were really obtrusive. Yeah,
exactly. It really messes with the whole experience. So like, it's really genuinely exciting. It reminds me of like the advent of super titles in general, right? Where people started going to the opera and there were stories of opera singers hearing laughter for the first time from the audience for these like comedic operas and stuff like that. And like, it's so exciting to me that people who have low vision or no vision at all have this outlet. And I genuinely hope that this system gets adopted, or systems like it get adopted outside of New Zealand and all over the world. I'm so excited about this.
Well, and it's also very cool that they're doing this for blind patrons, but they're also doing a different setup for low vision patrons. So those folks are going to have their own personal screens with them, and they're going to have subtitles in large text that's also coming through in real time, because somebody with low vision is not going to be able to see the super titles on the top of the stage. So they're going to be able to have that right in front of them also in real time. The technology is incredible. I'm so glad this is happening.
Yeah, it reminds me of the first time I realized I needed glasses was because I couldn't read the super titles. It's a very me story.
Weston.
That is classic Weston.
So this is really exciting news for me. I love these, accessibility things, bringing in more people to opera, representing, more minorities. Look, there's the segue.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, no.
Obviously, this is old news in a lot of ways, but it's another one, and it's another disappointing one. And this is in the orchestral world, not the operatic world, but like these numbers, Ashley. Geez.
We're cousins. We're all in this together. So, especially if you look at, shout out to him before, Zach Wolf doing another article a couple of weeks ago that I'd love for us to talk about, where he's encouraging symphony orchestras to do more opera to diversify their audiences. So we're all related. We're all cousins, and we're all disappointed because in a move that shocks no one, the classical world of programmatic theming is dominated by men, specifically 10 names that we know a whole lot about. Now listen, those guys do great work. Ain't nobody saying you shouldn't do that work, but maybe, just maybe, supplement in a little bit more. So were the numbers disappointing? Yes. Were they surprising? No.
And I will say the thing that is a little bit extra disappointing is that not only are the numbers not getting better, but they are getting a little bit worse in terms of the representation of non-white, non-male composers.
Yeah.
So it seems like maybe some arts companies are feeling like a little bit of heat is off of their backs from the last 4 years and are going back to their old ways. And I would like to encourage us as the audience to maybe say not so much.
Reapply some of that heat.
At the very least, we have to counteract the other angry voices that they're hearing in the form of people who are not on board with this trend of diversity of composers, who are sending angry letters and voicemails and emails into insert classical programming entity here. So if anything, our voice has to be a little bit louder.
You're talking about me?
I'm not talking about anybody. I'm just saying.
But also not specifically.
I'm just saying we need to be louder than those voices.
Yeah, we've all heard some voices here and there, and it's, it's disappointing that this is still a problem. Obviously, there was movement forward, couple steps backward, but the fact that we did move it forward for a little bit means we can move it forward again, and we should. So Rolex's hunger is eternal, is my takeaway. They got Yannick. They're coming for the Royal Opera House. They cannot be stopped.
Where's my watch? Rolex, where's my watch? You should be calling OBS. We would be amazing spokespeople. Could you imagine the ad campaign we could do? It would be so fierce.
It would be like, we disagree with elitism in opera. Wink, and then we're all just wearing our Rolex watches.
Why, yes, that is a mother of pearl face. Thank you for asking.
This could be you, Rolex. See what you're missing?
We could emblazon our images on the side of the new Dubai floating opera house and really just sell out, which I think would be great.
But we could also offer it as one of the merch. If you got something to say, you send us a voicemail, you get a Rolex.
That's right. Yeah, sponsor our
foam
podcast.
band finger.
Dubai, way to shed that elitist stereotype with a floating flippin' opera house. I mean, what in the neom is this? This is ridiculous. It's actually, no. I love when people are ready to build new art houses. Do not get me wrong. But the estimates on, sort of the projected timeline and how much this is going to cost. I mean, everything in Dubai is really expensive, but my goodness. But it's following
this is stunt queen behavior.
It is, fully stunt queen behavior. It's in this trend of building in these crazy, sort of desert surrounded places right on the water. They're building all of these insane things. I don't know if you're familiar with Neom, which is something that's being built in Saudi Arabia. It's this whole new like community, and like one is water based and one is air based, but everything's on the Red Sea. So it's like Dubai's just doing this on the Persian Gulf instead. So it's I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, I've said things, so I feel a little something, but I don't know how I'm going to feel about this next week.
Well,
but
it's also for wealthy tourists. You know what I mean? This is not going to. I mean, the wealth inequality in Dubai is absolutely horrific,
and this ain't helping. Yeah,
I would love if there was an initiative to actually reach out to average people in Dubai. But this is another stunt, just like, I mean, the entire Dubai is just a stunt in and of itself. And I think that's my whole take on them. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. It's how we end the show. Let's start with you, Oliver.
If you are a regular listener to the show and you remember that we interviewed Rayanne Bryce Davis at last year's Santa Fe Opera Festival, she did hint at her new album that she was working on while she was at Santa Fe. And it's a slow release. It's coming out song by song. The second song just came out this past week, The Beauty in My Blackness, composed by Maria Thompson Corley. And the full album will be out, I believe, later this summer. Meanwhile, I recommend that you follow Rayanne on Instagram. It's just Rayanne Bryce Davis, all one word. And she has a reel that came out 5 days ago about the trials and tribulations of being an opera singer, which I thought was really galvanizing for our community.
Matt Cummings.
Other cool stuff going on in the opera world that you should check out is a story from the New York Times that we'll link in our show notes about this very cool production taking place in New York that is kind of it's a 2 1-acts intertwined of Monteverdi's L'Incoronazione di Poppea and a new opera based on W.E.B. Du Bois's The Comet, and the latter with music written by George E. Lewis. It's directed by friend of the show and love of Oliver, Yuval Sharon, and just like sounds really cool, and I hope that it gets video recorded and or mounted everywhere, because I would really like to see this.
Ashley Hardgrave.
My good call this week is for conscious ear protection. More people should be doing it. Listeners, if you're listening, keep those ears where you can listen. Ear protection is so incredibly important. I spent this past weekend with my niece and her touring rock band festival of teenage rock bands. So yes, I got to listen to children from the ages of 12 to 17 doing covers of songs like Welcome to the Jungle. And some of them were run by sound people who knew what they were doing, and some weren't. So it was really great to have earplugs on me. And so it's just my reminder to remind everybody else, whether they're soft foam, whether they're high fidelity. Loop makes some really great earplugs. Even if you're hearing this beautiful, delicate classical music, there's going to be moments where it's bombastic. And if you feel any sensitivity, if your iPhone watch goes off and says that you're in a loud environment, heed that warning. Wear earplugs. You'll still be able to hear. You just won't hear as much of it.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, get your voice heard, and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is me. For co-hosts Matt Cummings and Ashley Hardgrave with guest Mané Galoyan, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you look more carefully at the line items of your Dubai condo assessment payment. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more Instagram-friendly singers. Join us.